Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Aaron Jacobs podcast, and Happy New Year. For those of you that don't know and are joining me for the first time, I'm a former public school band director from the state of Ohio and have now turned into a fitness coach for teachers. Today, as we enter the new year, and this is now week 2 of the new year, we are going to talk about what it actually means to be healthy, which we talked about a little bit on the previous episode, which released last Thursday, January 2nd. We all know that January tends to be time for people going to the gym more often. A couple of my clients have actually messaged me that have been doing things for a while, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to change when I go to the gym to make sure that I avoid the crowds. For those of you that are veterans of fitness, make sure you are as welcoming as possible to the new people, please. One of the things that drives me nuts is people that essentially get really fit and then they climb up that ladder and then they pull the ladder up behind them and they don't turn around and try to help people. And I don't find that that's the vast majority of people that attend the gym. You'll find that a lot of people that are actually very serious about training, very often we're actually in the complete opposite in terms of their fitness and their health. And that was certainly the case for me. So make sure that if you're a gym veteran, please don't walk in with an elitist attitude just because you can deadlift or bench a certain amount, or you can do certain things that most people can't. Be welcoming and be helpful to the new people. If you see weird things going down, the last thing we want to do is film people doing exercises that are unconventional or seem odd or counterproductive, which is very easy to do to get attention on the internet when you film somebody. I mean, I will fully admit that some of the things that I watch people do on those videos, because the algorithm knows me, I'm looking for fitness content. I do see some of the things pop up on my timeline, and yes, sometimes they are funny to watch. And so I will fully admit that sometimes I'll see those things and it does give me a bit of a laugh. But if I was in that space in practice, I would try my best to help the new person actually find their way around. But if you're just starting out, the best things you can do are just to be mindful of your plant and protein consumption and to walk more. Those two levers being pulled are so powerful. The average American does not walk nearly enough. We tend to average around 4,000 steps. And really, in order to be healthy, we need to pretty much double that, be closer to 7,500 steps as a bare minimum. And beyond that, you greatly reduce your risk of chronic disease for every 1,000 steps you add on top of that 7,500. So try to walk more, eat more plants, eat more protein. You're going to be in good shape. Basically, take the best parts of the vegan diet and the best parts of the carnivore diet and marry them together, and you're going to be just fine. Which will probably piss both those camps off, but I don't care. So let's get into what is actually healthy, because the internet and images and what people look like will tell you one story. And we delved a little bit into this last week and how having such a low body fat percentage can actually wreck your hormones and make you feel like shit, even if you look strong and vascular. A ripped bodybuilder does not mean peak health, especially when it comes to size. There are some internal metrics that matter way more for longevity. And size is certainly not one of them. And size doesn't necessarily always equal strength. And when I talk to people that are trying to get in shape for the first time, both men and women, though I do think women tend to have more of a fear of this, is that they're afraid to, I don't want to be bulky, I just want to tone up. Yeah, there's no such thing as just toning up by lifting lightweight. Lifting lightweight and not pushing heavier weights that are challenging, you're not doing yourself enough good. If you are lifting as a natural lifter, you're not using performance enhancing drugs, you're just trying to get stronger. Lifting heavy will not instantly add tons of bulk to you. And just remember, looking a certain way and being healthy are two very different things. There are a ton of trade-offs that people get when it comes to putting on that kind of size as a bodybuilder, especially when it's enhanced chemically. Within my coaching program, we measure health in different ways other than size. We measure it based on sleep quality. I mean, if you can get 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep per night, that's great. Some people, like myself, I actually total up very often to that 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but it's broken up into 2 different sleep windows. Some people just can't sleep consistently through the entire night. And actually, there is some evidence to show that our ancestors used to sleep in essentially biphasic sleep. So as long as we're totaling up that sleep, getting enough restful sleep for us, we're good to go. And I tend to actually be just fine on the lower end of that range. If I get 7 hours total of sleep and it's good quality sleep, getting enough deep sleep. I know what I feel like when I'm well rested and refreshed. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people are actually okay, even a little bit below that range. But ultimately, you know your body, and other health metrics that we're going to talk about are going to play into, are you actually getting enough sleep? And very often, steroid users will sacrifice sleep because you're disrupting your hormone production. You're essentially artificially messing with that. Not to mention, a lot of people that take performance enhancing drugs actually increase their anxiety. And as someone who just recovered last year from chronic depression and anxiety, where I had to take medication for both, I could tell you that getting enough sleep is really challenging. And that was on that medication and even off the medication, both ways. When my anxiety was at an all-time high, when my chronic depression was at its worst it's ever been, my sleep was garbage. So reducing stress in any way possible is great. Your general outlook on life is another way that we measure people's health. I do think there's a bit of body dysmorphia involved with putting on the kind of size that enhanced bodybuilders put on. And you'll notice that I'm talking about enhanced bodybuilders with a bit of a differentiator between enhanced bodybuilders and natural bodybuilders. Now, I would still say if you compete as a natural bodybuilder, the things you have to do to get stage ready are still not healthy protocols, but you're not doing them long term. It's really the enhanced bodybuilders that very often get the most attention on social media and are often viewed as the idealized physique and picture of health, quote unquote. And so that's why I'm focusing purely on that and dispelling that myth. The next thing that I love to focus on when it comes to optimal health, having a lower resting heart rate is a great sign of fantastic cardiovascular health and function. There's a couple ways we can attack this. So I really like to push my clients to hit super high intense exercise a couple of times a week. We'll get that heart rate super high into what we call zone 5, where the top end of a lifting set or using more of a high intensity interval training style workout, you're going to peak that heart rate once or twice a week and getting it to go as high as you possibly can, to the point where when you finish a workout, you need to lay on the ground and just wait to recover for a few minutes because you just pushed so hard. Some people don't know what it's like to push themselves hard enough in a workout. And to feel like you're barely hanging on, your heart's beating out of your chest, like you're out of breath and struggling to finish your workout, like truly struggling, truly hanging on for dear life at the end of a workout. If you don't do that on a regular basis, once or twice a week, you're not trying hard enough. Now, that being said, not everyone is at a place in their fitness where they should be attempting that, but your goal should be able to become healthy enough to where you can push yourself so hard in a workout to where your heart's beating out of your chest and you have to lay on the ground for a little bit to recover. And that may sound a little bit intense for some of you, and that's one thing that CrossFit does very well. Intensity does drive results. Now, the frequency of that intensity and how often you achieve that intensity, that's a different story. Personally, I think CrossFit asks you to do it a little too often. Really what we're looking for resting heart rate for men and women is a little different. If you're between 60 and 70 as an adult male, you're in great shape. Women, between 70 and 80 beats a minute, you're in great shape. And of course, going below that will indicate that you have not just good health, but excellent levels of fitness. Steroid users can often have an elevated resting heart rate due to the stimulants and also overtraining. And you hear about this not all the time. I don't think you hear about it frequently enough, but bodybuilders die at an unfortunately young age. So often we lose people to this chase of putting on size and muscle and vascularity and being as lean as possible at the same time. It's so hard on your heart. I read an article yesterday that there was a 19-year-old that died this year, 2024, due to a heart attack, and he was a bodybuilder. And when you see a picture of him, you can tell that he was putting on a lot of size for somebody at 19, probably using steroids. And unfortunately, and this is a topic for another day, steroid use among teens, it seems like it's becoming more popular. And so I'm hoping that we can fight against that. I would rather show people that it's ideal to feel a certain way and perform a certain way than to look a certain way when it comes to being healthy. Speaking of that battle between looking a certain way and feeling a certain way, there's two metrics when it comes to size that are very commonly used as health metrics. One of them is that body mass index, the good old BMI. BMI is a bit of a weird one because I tend to live as someone who's athletic and has some muscle. I tend to live at the higher end of the healthy BMI range. Sometimes on a day where I'm a little bit heavier, maybe I'm retaining more water, I'm just barely into that quote unquote overweight range on the BMI. But Going way into that overweight and obese category, a lot of bodybuilders that are packing on that much size, they're obese on the BMI scale, and so their heart's having to work really hard to pump blood to the muscles. And your heart has to work really hard to pump to a bigger body. It doesn't really know much of the difference when it comes to body fat or muscle. And yes, of course, I'd rather have people have more muscle than body fat. And of course, the rest of your organs know the difference between packing on muscle and having a lot of body fat, of course. But regardless, having a ton of size still makes your heart work harder. So there's a balance to achieve there. And so when people say that things like, oh, CrossFitters don't lift as heavy and they're not strong and this and that, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we might not be able to lift as much as someone who focuses entirely on strength or powerlifting, but I would venture to guess that because we train in a variety of modalities, and certainly the way we do in my program, we're probably healthier long term. There's another metric that I think is a really good one that I also encourage people to take a look at, which is a waist to height ratio. Basically taking a look at your waist size compared to your height. So an ideal waist to height ratio is less than 0.5, aka waist circumference should be under half of your height. And anywhere in the range of 0.4 to 0.5 in the waist to height ratio is considered healthy. And you can simply find a BMI calculator and a waist to height ratio calculator just by a simple search on the internet, or even an AI app will be able to get you a calculator, or you can even ask an AI app. It'll probably calculate it for you. Another metric we use is getting stronger and more athletic. Stronger doesn't necessarily mean putting on size. Everyone loves to focus on hitting 1 rep maxes all the time, and that's great. And there's some good things to focus on there. Like if you can deadlift 1.5 times your body weight, you can bench press your body weight. Those things are great to focus on. Being able to squat your body weight for reps, like those are good things to aim for. Either your 1 rep maxes on those lifts, or being able to hit those lifts for a certain amount of reps at a certain weight. Those are great metrics to focus on. It's gonna be a little bit different for everybody, and I go into more specifics in my program with people as they get more advanced and they move out of the initial training phase and building capacity, which is usually like the first 3 to 4 months of our program. In addition, how about just being able to run a mile in under 9 minutes without your heart rate going crazy? Training in an aerobic capacity is almost like a bridge between your low intensity work, like walking or just doing non-exercise activities in your day, and the super high intensity, spike your heart rate, kick your ass, lay on the ground kind of workouts that I promote people to do once or twice a week. And very often what I find is that if I fall off of my aerobic training and I just do HIIT training, I just do the high intensity stuff, my performance in HIIT training suffers. My recovery time between bouts of intense exercise that are in short intervals, my time to recover between those increases. So the aerobic training and bridging the gap between high heart rate and low heart rate, to me, is a huge training metric that a lot of people, I think, miss, especially in the CrossFit space. So being able to run not just maybe a single mile in under 9 minutes, but also how many minutes can you run at a steady pace without your heart rate jumping all over the place? It's another sign of good cardiovascular function. Here's another simple one that especially a lot of really big bodybuilders are probably terrible at. Enhanced bodybuilders most certainly are, because you have so much size. Can you reach forward from a seated stretch and touch your toes? Can you put your arm behind your head and scratch your back? Can you rotate your shoulders fully without any pain? How much flexibility do you have in your hips, your arms, your joints? Can you move into full joint mobility without pain? And when you put on as much size as enhanced bodybuilders do, an issue that they encounter, and you see these horrific injuries with like people tearing muscles and stuff, like, ugh, gross, terrible. When you pack on that kind of size, your muscles grow at a rate that is much faster than your joints, ligaments, and tendons grow, and therefore can support. So when you see things like muscle tears off of joints, and you see those things, you see those horrific injuries happen, a lot of times it's because packing on so much size that the rest of our building blocks in our body don't grow at a rate commensurate with the muscle. So it's important that we keep flexibility and mobility in mind, along with building strength gradually over time. Also, a more advanced metric, I think in 2025, I'm making it a goal to find a place where I can get my VO2 max tested. That is the ability for your body to utilize oxygen under intense exercise. So in conclusion, size does not mean health. Enhanced bodybuilders are not healthy people. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, they are the enemies of the fitness industry because they show what people often mistake as the ideal physique when in actuality, they are unhealthy. And I think a lot of people actually know that deep down that those people aren't healthy, but I think it's important from an objective perspective to break down why they aren't unhealthy. So as you embark on your new year, new you health journey in 2025, use the metrics we've talked about in today's podcast as a way of measuring your health outcomes and success. Really, nothing more important than having a great outlook on life and feeling positive about the direction you're going. Nothing more important for your health than that. Thank you all very much for listening to the Aaron Jacobs podcast today, where we talked about what it really means to be healthy and how to measure it. Everyone take care and be well, and good luck with your goals in this new year.